This episode of Storytellers is brought to you by these fine companies.
I'm Nicky Boninfante, and you're watching Storytellers at Competition Plus TV. Like, I believe when I told this story on the Storyteller Christmas program, you know, we brought up one of our good friends. He worked with us here at Coletta's. You know, he worked, and he worked here for a long time. And I went to work for Doug Herbert for a while, and Joe went over there too. You know, Joe was a good stand-up man. He drank a lot of Jack Daniels. Always drank it out of the same roadkill cup that he had. He did shots, and he drank Diet Coke. And he drank a lot of shots of Jack Daniels and a lot of Diet Coke. And so we were in Reading at Maple Grove, my favorite track, home track. You know, at the time I was staying at my house, and so I wasn't staying at the hotel with the guys. And Joe was on one that weekend. He was definitely drinking a lot of Jack. He kept it right in his locker with all his piston racks and his toolbox. And as soon as the day was over, we'd load the car up. Good old Joe go in there and he'd start doing shots. So this one particular night, it's Saturday night, and we're sitting there. Guys are having a few drinks. I got to drive back to my house about an hour away, so I'm getting ready to leave, and Joe pulls out this, had to be a half stick of dynamite, and he had a bunch of them. He had a whole bag of them in his locker, and he says, "I'm going to blow something up with this." And I said, "Joe, you don't need to blow anything up. You just need to go back to the room and go to sleep." So Joe didn't take my advice. He went back to the room, proceeded to probably finish off his fifth of Jack Daniels, and he decided that he was going to test out that dynamite. So I don't know, a few hours later, the story be told, my old buddy Doug Dragoo, who's his roommate, comes back from the bar, and he comes in there, and Joe's sitting there. He's sitting there on the edge of the bed, and he's got his hands over his head. He's just shaking his head. Doug walks in and he says, "Joe, what's wrong? Is your mom okay?" Joe had a really old mom, and he always worried about Ma. Thought she was going to die while he was gone. And so he says, "I did a bad thing. Doug, I did a real bad, dumb thing." So, you know, Joe says it with that accent of his from Oklahoma. I did a dumb thing. So, of course, Doug says, What happened, Joe? What happened?" So Joe says to him, "Look over there." So Doug looks over, and he sees that the bathroom door is no longer on the hinges. And he kind of walks over and he looks in, and all he sees is a hole where the toilet used to be, two studs sticking up with the nuts still on. He looks over in the trash can under the sink, and the whole toilet in pieces is in the trash can and next to the trash can. So Doug, he starts yelling at Joe. "Joe, you didn't put that piece of dynamite down that toilet, did you?" He says, "Yeah, Doug, I lit it and threw it and flushed it down there, and I couldn't believe what it did." Well, what it did was it blew the door off the hinges, blew the toilet off blew the pipes out. There was a leak in the room below us, and there was a lot of damage. So I didn't know any of this until I got back to the track the next morning. I get back to the track, and everybody's pretty quiet, especially Joe. So I find out, I go up to Doug and I said, Doug, what's going on? How come everybody's so quiet? He says, well, you'll never guess what Joe did. What did Joe do? He blew the shitter up. Where? In the hotel room, in our room. Wow. I guess we're in trouble. Meanwhile, our good friend Lori Frazier, she calls me. She used to do our rooms back then. Still does. And Lori calls, says, we got a problem. Don't really remember the consequences, but I believe Doug had to pay for the damage. And I believe we had to write an apology letter. But we were never able to stay at that hotel again. So, and good old Joe, he's gone now, and so is Doug Dragoo. So this story's in memory of those guys. Those two guys are pretty good friends of mine.